Hi folks, we're going to take a look at number 2 from the December 5 worksheet. So here it gives us the height with respect to the water level of a dolphin is given by this equation here, and they want us to determine the exact moments at which the dolphin is at water level. Okay, in other words, when the height is equal to 0 in the first 10 meters horizontally, because here D is representing horizontal distance. Okay, I guess the use of the word times here, I think that was a leftover from a previous version of this question. Okay, maybe be the exact distances at which the dolphin is at water level. Okay, so let's solve this problem here. So in this case, we're actually given the model, so we don't have to come up with it ourselves, and we want to know when the height is equal to 0. Okay, so the equation that I'm solving is cos d plus sine 2d equals 0. Okay. So in this case here, there's really not much you can do algebraically to solve this problem. So really I think the only option is to use a trigonometric identity to rewrite sine 2d. Okay, so here we have cos d plus, and sine 2d is equal to 2 sine d cos d. And now this opens up some possibilities because I've got a common factor in these first two terms. Okay, so I have cos d times 1 plus 2 sine d is equal to 0. So I have it in factored form. Okay, so now I know that either the first or the second term has to be equal to 0. So either cos d is equal to 0 or 1 plus 2 sine d has to be equal to 0. Okay, and remember that I'm only interested in answers within the first 10 units of the horizontal distance d. Okay, so this one here is pretty easy because we know when when cos is equal to 0. So from here we have pi over 2. Okay, so if you want to draw yourself a little picture here, so we know that at pi over 2, cos is equal to 0, and at 3 pi over 2. Okay, now since they're asking for exact I guess times or exact distances, okay, I'm going to leave these as is. Okay, so now we have to keep going until we reach 10 meters. Okay, so here this is like 3 times 3, 9 over 2, 4.5, so that's still good. So 3 pi over 2, next we go 5 pi over 2. Okay, so 5 pi over 2. Now again, this is 5 times 3, 15 divided by 2. It's about 7.5. We're still within this the 10 meters. Okay, next we'll go 7 pi over 2. Okay, so again 7 times 3, 21 divided by 2. Oh, that might be a little too much. In fact, it is, so we're not going to include this as part of our solution set. Okay, so here we have d equals pi over 2 meters, 3 pi over 2 meters, and 5 pi over 2 meters. Okay, so now let's go to see what answers might come out of this second term here. Okay, so solve for sine d. So sine d, so bring the 1, so negative 1 over 2. Okay, now this does correspond to a special angle, so I will be able to find those exact values. So again, if you want to draw yourself a little picture here, now remember that sine is going to be negative in the third and fourth quadrants. Okay, and since it's y over r, so 1, we've got our smaller one here, so we know that this angle is going to be pi over 6. So if I'm looking for the full angle, well, it's going to be 6 pi over 6 is pi plus another pi over 6, so this is 7 pi over 6. Okay, or of course I've got another version in the fourth quadrant. Okay, so that would be 12 pi over 6 would be all the way around, minus pi over 6, so this would be 11 pi over 6. Okay, so I make use of my knowledge of the Cartesian plane to help me determine these angles quickly. Okay, now before I start writing out the answers, let's just keep in mind that if this was not a sine value that corresponded to an exact angle, I would have had to use sine inverse. And remember, sine inverse would have given me a negative angle as my answer. So I would not have included that in my answer set, okay, because I'm not interested in negative horizontal distances. So my first answer would have been this one here, gotten by pi minus theta. Okay, so just to keep that in mind when you're using the calculator. But in this case here, I can find exact answers. So we have 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. Okay, and let's see how many other answers they have. So from 7 pi over 6, I can go all the way around. So add another 12 pi over 6. So 7 plus 12 gives me 7 plus 12 gives me 19 pi over 6. So again, let's calculate to see if that's below 10. So here we've got 19 times pi divided by 6. Yeah, and here, in fact, that's 9.95. So I know I don't need to go any further. If I go to the next answer over, oh, sorry, so you can see that, 9.95. Okay, I'll be over 10. Okay, so my answers from the second part of my factored equation gives me 7 pi over 6 meters, 11 pi over 6 meters, and 19 pi over 6 meters. Okay, so we see that within the first 10 meters of horizontal distance, we have 6 moments at which the dolphin will be exactly at water level. Okay, that's it for this one.